Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video, wherever you are in the world, finds you well and in good spirits. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue our discussion of the recent releases made by the Criterion collection. Today, I'd like to focus our attention on that which was designated as spine number 1027. This is a film that is from 1963, directed by John Sturges, and this is the film called The Great Escape. So this is a film released in 1963, and it is directed by John Sturges, and it is a motion picture account that is based on real-world historical events with respect to the attempted escape of a number of soldiers that were prisoners of war in a German prisoner of war camp during World War II, and taken also from the pages of the book written by Paul Brickhill. This is the film The Great Escape, and it is a long film. It is about 172 minutes according to the back of the Criterion Blu-ray box here, but it is a film whose running time seems to fly by like that, because it is still enthralling, it is still engaging, it is deeply exciting, very moving, quite poignant. There are plenty of moments of tragedy. There are a lot of moments of triumph. There are moments of real poignant, moving intimacy between these well-rounded characters that occupy the screen in a larger-than-life sort of way. And at the same time, we are reminded of the attempts that the film is trying to make in trying to somehow honor or somehow capture the spirit of what actually happened in this particular prisoner of war camp during this time of World War II. And with that, we have a really multifaceted, quite an entertaining film that is so much more. This is the film The Great Escape, and my goodness, this film seems to not age. It ages so well, let me put it that way. It is a film that still reminds me of the real glorious triumph of this kind of cinema, this epic staged cinema that relies upon a real multitude of many different actors who are all seemingly there are many actors and there are many characters, but it all creates this incredibly well-balanced tapestry of a network of characters that are all doing his part in the narrative proceedings of the work. And one of the things I really admire about this film is, well, there are many things I admire, but among them are, as I tried to hint at just now, the real clever and masterful way that it balances all these different stories and all the different character arcs that accompany this sweeping epic with so many intimate portrayals of different characters. And we have a great cast that helps to illuminate and to further give life to these great characters that we see on screen. Again, well balanced, well portrayed, well acted, and given a thorough sort of treatment from start to finish, and that is a wonderful thing about this work. Steve McQueen, of course, James Garner, Richard Attenborough, Charles Bronson, James Coburn, Donald Pleasance, to name but a few. And so they really provide the human element, the human dimension that is taking place within the context of a very suspenseful story, a very exciting story. It is a one that is very exhilarating in a number of different places. There are many moments of tragedy, of defeat, and of real sorrow that permeate the narrative workings of this film. And I'm so happy and so amazed that those moments of tragedy and sorrow still are quite effective even to this day. But that's not all, of course, because it still remains a sort of triumphant film. A film that is a grand entertainment on the one hand, but it is also a testament, if you will, to the human spirit of these characters and of the human story that this film is trying to portray. And the way it's portraying it too, the way in which we have a lot of details that occupy the proceedings, the geography of the particular setting, the way in which the men work together in their own ways to try to plan out this particular escape, and the methodical way in which each aspect is planned, and how the film very patiently carries through with this presentation of the nitty-gritty, the little details that make up the entirety of the plan, and then the attempt to carry out the plan, and then the aftermath of the attempt to carry out the plan. And not only do we get the methodical approach to the many facets and aspects of the plan to escape, the great escape in question here, we also get the human element, how the human element either intrudes upon the plan making. In other words, there is little room afforded for human error, and yet these men, they are human and they are fallible under these highly stressful, highly pressured situations. And so human error and human fallibility come into play. And it's how these characters react to human fallibility which creates another compelling aspect of the drama, a really riveting aspect of the drama. But at the same time, the human element also comes through in a beautiful, poignant, shining way, in that we have an intimate portrayal of bonding between these men who are under pressure and who all have this singular focused goal, which is to carry out the plan and to succeed with this particular plan. And therefore, therein lies a lot of the beautiful moments, the beautiful human moments, the way in which the men take a moment to acknowledge each other or to speak with each other and to share little bits of themselves with one another. And therefore, this all combines to create a very multifaceted, quite engaging and enthralling work that remains, I think, very effective and quite timeless, thus making this, I think, a very wonderful release to be made in the Criterion collection. And it holds up so well. This is one of the greats. So this is The Great Escape from 1963. Again, it's spine number 1027 in the Criterion collection. This is a really good one, my friends. And so, speaking of the Criterion collection, let me now go through this particular release, and we can go from there. So this is the Blu-ray. And this is the Blu-ray that is purported to be new restored 4K digital transfer. And the picture looks great, and it's a real lovely quality. I do own this on a Criterion laserdisc right here. And so this film coming back into the Criterion collection, I say coming back because this used to be a laserdisc. And this was a 2-disc laserdisc way back in the day with laserdisc spine number 95. And this was a good one. It had an audio commentary, which included John Sturges, which I'll get to in a second as well. And it had some other supplements. This is a great one to have. And therefore, to see this in the Criterion collection on this Blu-ray is, in a way, a return of this film back into the Criterion collection. And so I was very happy when I heard the news of its initial release. But going back to the Criterion Blu-ray for a moment, what we have a number of things. So first of all, we should say that there are 2 commentary tracks. These are commentary tracks that are pre-existing, and so there aren't any new commentary tracks recorded for the occasion of this particular Blu-ray release in 2020. So there are no new commentary tracks, but the existing commentary tracks that are relied upon for this release are excellent. And what are they? So the first commentary track is from 1991, and this features John Sturges, Elmer Bernstein, Robert E. Relier, and Bud Eakins, and also Bruce Eder. And this is from 1991, and the commentary track can also be found on the Laserdisc as well. So it's a really good one, and it's really good in particular because, as I say, this features among the other participants in the commentary track, John Sturges himself. And so we get to hear from the director's own words certain aspects of the production history and what were some of the directing choices that were made and the like. And so this is a great one to have, a really great one to have. Just a little bit of detail. Might be a little bit hard to follow upon first listen because there aren't necessarily any kind of markers. In other words, there are different participants, and it's a commentary track that seems to be edited together from different sources. So each participant is essentially speaking on his own. And then the commentary track is edited to create one singular track. And so you go from one person who's talking about the film and then another person who's talking about the film, etc. Unfortunately, there aren't any indications of the change. In other words, it goes from, let's say, John Sturges talking, and then suddenly it'll go to Elmer Bernstein talking, and there won't be necessarily any cue or anyone saying, oh, now here's a different person talking about the film. And so it might be a little bit hard to follow at first, but I think one will notice the change in the voice, and one will notice the participants' discussion topic, and that will usually match up with the person talking. And so I think when we're listening to it, we can actually more or less follow what's going on. But there's that little detail. So just in case you are listening to the commentary track for the first time, just keep that in mind going forward. So that's the first commentary track. But then the second commentary track is from 2003. And this is moderated by Stephen J. Rubin, who is a very big expert in this film, and he actually is involved in another supplement that is included in this release, and I'll get to that in a moment. But he moderates this commentary track, or maybe moderates is not the right word. He is hosting the commentary track, which is then also with many different participants. Also, they're not in the same room necessarily, but they're all taken from different sources and then edited together into one commentary track. This is from 2003, so this has been made available in previous releases of this film, non-Criterion releases of this film. And the participants in the commentary track are, other than Stephen J. Rubin, we have John Sturges, and John Sturges's comments are actually taken from a 1974 interview that Stephen J. Rubin conducted. And then including our other participants are Robert E. Relier and James Coburn and James Garner, David McCallum, Donald Pleasance, Judd Taylor, and production designer Fernando Carrere, and then stuntman Bob Eakins, and then Steve McQueen manager Hilly Elkins. And so this is a brilliant commentary track. Again, it goes into certain production history details. It goes into certain historical background details because, as I say, this is a film based on historical events. And also gives some anecdotal stories about certain aspects of the cast and crew. There's an interesting story, for instance, between actors that David McCallum recounts between himself and Charles Bronson. And it's a very interesting one and involves their personal lives as well. So that's an interesting example there. But I think just as a general commentary track, it is really excellent. And you're getting a lot of great details and a lot of great information. So it's definitely worth it. Again, from 2003, this is the commentary track that is hosted by Stephen J. Rubin. And then as far as the supplements are concerned, we have the first documentary, which is from 2001. So this is a non-Criterion documentary, but this is called The Great Escape: Heroes Underground. And this is a 4-part documentary, or it is a documentary that can be watched in 4 separate parts, and it's divided up into Bringing Fact to Fiction, Preparations for Freedom, The Flight to Freedom, and A Standing Ovation. Now, this is a supplement that has also been made available on past releases of this film, and so it's nothing new necessarily, but it's still very valuable. The focus of this particular documentary is on the historical side, the actual participants in this event, or in these events that became the basis for the film The Great Escape. And we see the historical discussions, which means the parallels that are made between fact and fiction, and then some of the differences that are made between fact and fiction, and some of the other specific background details that went into trying to capture the historical accuracy of certain aspects of the story and what those historical details were, and so on and so forth. So, as I say, the historical background, I think, is part of the the great strength of this film, because when you're watching the film, you realize that the film, although it is it is a self-acknowledged fictionalized account, it still carries with it a lot of weight of history. And so to have the details of that weight of history, I think, are very important. And so this documentary is a great source for obtaining some of those details. So once again, this is The Great Escape: Heroes Underground. And then the next supplement which is found is called The Real Virgil Hilts, A Man Called Jones. And this is another supplement that had been found on previous releases of this film. And so this is not a Criterion produced supplement, but this is one from 2001. This was prepared by John Cork for the MGM release, and this is narrated by James Coburn. It's about 25 minutes, and it's focusing in on the person called David M. Jones, Air Force pilot for the U.S. Army, who apparently formed the basis, whose character in the film corresponds to the character played by Steve McQueen, Hilts. And so it's an interesting documentary that's covering not just the real life person of Air Force pilot David M. Jones, but also the comparisons and parallels that can be found within the character of Hilts as portrayed by Steve McQueen in the film. So once again, this is yet another glimpse at, or this is another way of getting information as to the details that form some of the key components that go into the weight of history that is a key part of viewing this film. And so just like the earlier supplement that came before it, this supplement, The Real Virgil Hilts, A Man Called Jones, is, I think, really worthwhile watching. Once again, it's not new, it's not exclusive to this Criterion release, but it's still better to have than not having at all. So it's really worthwhile if you haven't seen it. And then there is a third supplement, which is also a non-Criterion supplement. This time this is from 1993, so it's a slightly older documentary, but it's called Return to the Great Escape. Now, this was prepared by Deborah Goodwin and Steve Rubin. His name is credited as Steve Rubin, but this is the same Stephen J. Rubin that we saw on the second of the two commentary tracks that is included here, the commentary track from 2003. And this is yet another documentary going into the making of and production details and historical details that are related to The Great Escape. So we have David McCallum, Donald Pleasance, James Garner, and James Colburn, among others, that are being interviewed, and they're talking about their experiences with John Sturges. They're talking about their own some of them have their own wartime experience, and so they speak a little bit about that. And there are other aspects that are mentioned in other supplements, but it's nice to get yet other perspectives on these details of working with John Sturges, or what was Steve McQueen like, and those sorts of things. And so it's a great, again, another great documentary. It's covering similar ground that the earlier documentaries might have covered, but it feels like it's a slightly different approach, and we get these interviews, and I think it's again really worth it. And so this is an older documentary, but it's still a really informative one. So this is Return to the Great Escape from 1993. And then we get our one and only new Criterion-produced supplement. And this was from early 2020. This is an interview, or this is a one-on-one conversation with Michael Sragow. And this is Michael Sragow on John Sturges and The Great Escape. It's approximately 23 minutes. And this is great because Michael Sragow is essentially speaking not just about the film The Great Escape and its sort of cultural significance and why it is still so effective as a cinematic work of art, but he also takes time to talk to us about John Sturges, the director, and talk to us a little bit about his background, the lead up to his professional career, and his methods, his working methods, his style, and what he's known for, and then how he directed the film, how his efforts led to the creation of what now is called The Great Escape. And so this is a really great one. Again, in the earlier commentary tracks, or the commentary tracks that are included here, we do get some excerpts of comments from John Sturges himself. So that's really good. But it's also nice to get this academic perspective from Michael Sragow on the life and work of John Sturges, and also the context of John Sturges' filmography and The Great Escape, and also aspects of The Great Escape as well. So this is a really wonderful interview. Again, it's 23 minutes, but it's really, really worth it, and it's packed with a lot of information. So once again, this is called Michael Sragow on John Sturges and The Great Escape. And then to round out the supplements that are found on the disc, we have a trailer, which is about 2 minutes and 43 seconds. So that's also good to have. But that's not all, because we also get included, this is the Blu-ray and this is the back here. And then inside, which is, you have this fold-out leaflet type of insert. And it's one of these things. It's not a stable booklet, unfortunately, but it's still, it's good because it has the essay here, and I'll get to that in a second. But then it also has on the back this sort of drawing, and then information on the cast and crew, and also information about the Criterion release here. I should just note, for instance, the illustration is by Sean Phillips, so art director Sarah Habibi, Eric Skillman, designer Eric Skillman, illustration Sean Phillips. So just take a look at this artwork. It's really, really splendid. And also I should just point out this particular drawing, which can also be found on the earlier Criterion Laserdisc, which is right here. So that's a really nice little detail that reminds me or brings me back to the earlier Laserdisc release here. And then we have the essay which is called Not Caught by Sheila O'Malley. And I'm a big fan of the essays, as you know, and this one is no exception. This is a really splendid essay. It goes into certain aspects of similar types of films, similar types of war genre films, and it goes into why this is considered part of that genre but also stands out. It also talks about John Sturges. It also talks about a little bit about the historical details. It also talks about some of the performances, some of the actors. Steve McQueen is mentioned in particular. It also talked about the impact of this film and the significance of this film coming out when it did in 1963, and how this film's legacy has really lived on to great stature and great fame ever since its initial release to the present day. And so it's a great essay, really worth checking out. Once again, it's called Not Caught by Sheila O'Malley. And so with that, my friends, we have yet another stellar release from the Criterion collection. And as I say, it's a release that is, it reminds me that we have another Criterion laserdisc that has come back to, another title that was a Criterion laserdisc that has now come back to the Criterion collection in a glorious, grand way. Of course, it would have been nice, perhaps, if we could have seen maybe more, I don't know, Criterion-produced supplements. The Michael Sragow interview is really wonderful. It would have been interesting, perhaps, to maybe get another commentary track, a new commentary track on the one hand. But I can't complain because the two commentary tracks that are already existent and that are made available here, I think, are absolutely superb. And so those are really worth listening to, both of them. So it's a long movie, I know, but as I say, the film goes by really quickly, and the commentary tracks are each very interesting and important in their own specific ways. So I recommend checking those out if you haven't already. But ultimately, it comes down to the film, and as I say, this film still packs a wallop even now. It's a film that is highly, highly entertaining. It is very exhilarating. It feels very fresh, and also I admire it very much for its endeavors to pay attention to detail, and not just the details of the plan and every little step of the way needs to be solved and thought out. Not just those details, although those are really fascinating in and of itself, but also the inner workings and the inner details and the small details that make up the human experience. And those are the way in which human beings are fallible, and then also the way in which human beings can really find triumph even in the most dire of situations. And so that I think is really what encapsulates this film for me. It's this way of this film feeling very grand and very epic in scope because of the largesse of the tapestry of the narrative, and also the way in which it balances so many characters at once. So it feels large and larger than life on the one hand, and at the same time it has time to focus on the intimate and the sort of minute microcosm of the narrative details, but also of human experience. And so that's what I think, in essence, makes this film such a glorious, grand watch for me, even now in 2020. So this is a fine, fine release, splendid release from the Criterion collection. Once again, Criterion has really done us a really good thing by having this film released. This is The Great Escape on spine number 1027. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you so much again, my friends, for your time, and cheers.